Welcome to part 2 in my video series discussing bipolar disorder and denial. The first video explored parents who are in denial of our mental illness. I highly recommend watching it if you haven't seen it yet. This second video is going to focus on other scenarios, like when a friend or spouse is in denial. Hopefully, by the end of this two-part series, you'll have a better understanding of how denial can impact someone living with bipolar disorder. No need for a long introduction, so let's get right into part 2. Culture plays a big role in denying bipolar disorder, as well as other mental illnesses. In many cultures, mental illness is seen as a moral failing or as a sign of weakness. My partner is Cambodian, and the way mental health is addressed in Asia, for example, is extremely different from in the United States. Some blame mental illness on the family, as if the family failed to successfully care for its loved one. If the family seeks external support like meds or therapy, it's seen as a sign of weakness. The family is looked down upon culturally because they can't manage things on their own. This causes families to lose social status, and the shame associated with that prevents people from seeking help. Cultural denial runs deep in many countries today. The next scenario where bipolar disorder is denied has to do with gender roles. We've all heard the popular expression, "boys don't cry." In many cultures, boys are chastised if they show any sign of emotional or physical weakness. Growing up, I was groomed by society to be strong, independent, and capable of handling things without asking for help. Seeking treatment almost undermines the gender norms and expectations we have of men. But women don't have it any easier. We've also heard the popular expression, crying like a little girl. Women are often written off as more emotional, that it's normal for them to struggle emotionally, and as a result, they aren't taken seriously. All that said, bipolar symptoms are often denied because of stereotypical gender roles. Another factor that plays a role in how mental health is recognized or not is age. How old a person is can affect their willingness to acknowledge mental health issues. Younger people are more likely to recognize mental illness and seek treatment for it. My grandparents' generation didn't talk about mental illness outside of the family. It wasn't discussed in schools or on the news, and it wasn't like you could Google your symptoms 80 years ago. People were either normal or crazy, and crazy people were so stigmatized that there was horrible fear surrounding being labeled as such. The older the person, the more likely they are to resist things like medications or talk therapy, and the more likely they are to deny someone else's mental illness. This next scenario is where faith or spirituality play a role in denying mental illness. Across different cultures, religious or spiritual traditions explain the sources of mental illness in a variety of ways. For example, some religions attribute mental illness to demons, or might even blame you for lacking enough faith, or recommend that you just need to pray more. Others believe it's karma, where it's one's destiny or fate to suffer from mental illness. Some cultures believe it's a lack of harmony with the natural world. There are even cultures where bipolar disorder is seen as a spiritual gift. Regardless of whether we agree or disagree, we have to consider the source. If someone comes from a faith tradition where psychiatry isn't recognized, they might not see the cause of symptoms like we do. They could easily and innocently deny our explanation for the illness. Moving right along to the next scenario, let's say a friend is in total denial of your diagnosis. They say things like, "It's all in your head," or that everyone's a little bipolar. There's many reasons why they might say these things. If your friend isn't well-versed in bipolar disorder, they might simply not know what to say about your diagnosis. It might feel like they are minimizing your feelings, while in reality, they don't know enough about the illness to contribute to the conversation. Fear could also cause them to deny your diagnosis. Your friend could be projecting or in painful denial of their own mental illness. Remember, part of bipolar disorder is the difficulty recognizing that we're ill. Another reason they may deny your bipolar disorder is that it makes them feel better to dismiss the pain and suffering of others. They may otherwise be a compassionate person, but it could be their way of trying to make their own fears less intense, as if this terrifying problem will never happen to them. The last scenario that I want to explore is when a partner or spouse denies our diagnosis. Denial is often used as a defense or coping mechanism. It's a way of avoiding uncomfortable realities. If my partner were diagnosed with some obscure illness, I'd feel totally helpless not knowing how to support them. It would be so much easier to deny there's a problem and hope that it will just go away. Romantic partners also tend to gloss over issues because they want to avoid confrontation. Being faced with a problem where there's seemingly no solution can cause internal panic. The painful truth of the situation can induce anxiety, causing some people to respond in unfavorable ways. Also, if they put a name to it like bipolar disorder, all of a sudden it becomes very real. It means that they can't deny the fact that there's a problem anymore. Now, this video wouldn't be complete without at least a few tips. As with all my videos on denial, please keep realistic expectations. If someone is so deeply rooted in their culture or denial that they aren't willing to communicate, you may have to agree to disagree and move on. Whether that means moving on from the conversation or the relationship, that's up to you. My first tip is to explore their beliefs with a gentle sense of curiosity. Sometimes exploring why people believe something can help explain what they believe. The more interested you are, the more likely they are to open up. The more gentle you are, the more likely they are to mirror your energy and be gentle back. My second tip is to choose your battles carefully. Is it really worth it to try and educate a friend or loved one who is rigidly opinionated? It could be futile, like debating religion or politics with them. Sometimes you have to know when to throw in the towel and respectfully bow out of the conversation. Tip number 3 is hard to do. This would be setting boundaries. If you've had really negative experiences talking to someone about mental illness, it's not worth triggering each other by continuing the debate. Boundaries are meant to keep people together, not apart. Use I statements in a calm, neutral tone. You could say something like, I feel like a difference in opinion isn't worth straining our relationship. Let's agree to disagree and discuss something else. If they aren't receptive and continue, you could say, I feel I'm not being respected and I choose to not continue this conversation. Following through to preserve your boundaries is crucial. My last tip on handling denial is to expand your support circle, preferably with fellow polar warriors. Peer support is like finding people who speak your language. If you don't know where to start or don't have any local support groups, I'd like to invite you to mine. There's a link in the video description that will take you to our Patreon community. There you can join me for live peer support groups, call me directly on the phone, and network with people all over the world who live with bipolar disorder. There's even an option where you can join for free now, so I hope to see you there. I know this has been a long video, you guys, so it's time to get up and stretch. Maybe grab some water before watching another Polar Warrior video. Also, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Is there a scenario I missed or a tip you'd like to share? Please join the conversation. It could really help others to not feel alone, and I thank you in advance. Take extra good care of yourselves, and I'll be back here soon with more Polar Warrior videos. Stay well.